All right, guys, welcome back to the Rattling the Brain podcast. We are on season three, episode three, and we have an amazing guest on today. We have Tara Slone coming on. Tara is a musician, broadcaster. She's worked on hometown hockey as well as she works with the San Jose Sharks. She's a huge advocate for mental health, and I'm super excited to have her on the podcast. Tara, thank you for joining.
Hey, thank you for having me. I appreciate it.
So I'm sure we can have an entire podcast discussion about your music career, which for those of you who don't know was very good. But I'm a sports media student at TMU right now, and I'm very interested in your broadcasting career. So I think that's cool with you. We'll start there.
Yeah, absolutely. What do you want to know? How it happened?
I kind of want to know the transition first of all. So how
Yeah.
did you go from music into broadcasting?
It wasn't as strange a leap as anybody thought. It kind of looks weird on paper, but I grew up a huge hockey fan, which is not unlike a lot of people here in Canada, right? We all grow up watching Hockey Night in Canada, and so it was always an underlying passion for me, although I never played. So even through my music career, I would make appearances on various sports talk shows. So it was just kind of always at the back of my mind as like something I liked as a hobby. Um, so when I was sort of hanging it up in terms of my music career, the doors to television opened, and I was just very intentional about moving into the hockey world. So I started as an entertainment reporter, which was, the probably the easiest transition from musician to television because that was the world I was working in. But as soon as I had some real experience in TV, I started to really explore what the hockey landscape looked like. And luckily, it was right at the time when Rogers Media got the first round of rights to the NHL. So that's hometown hockey was part of their plan for their first number of years, and I threw my hat into the ring and got the job.
How did you stand out in the sports broadcasting industry? So obviously you're coming from music, so there's a lot of similarities there. But how did you manage to stand out and get these jobs?
I think obviously I'd like to think I'm good at my job and that's part of it. But I think a lot of it is being really clear about what it is you want. I remember when Hometown Hockey was announced and I was telling a producer that I worked with, like, God, that sounds like such a cool concept. I'd love to be involved in that. And he said, Well, have you told anybody? And I said, No. And it's sort of like we kind of have these little dreams, but you have to take some action. So I actually wrote a pretty impassioned letter to the president of Sportsnet at the time, Scott Moore. He and I knew each other, and he knew my work, so he already knew that I could handle a big show. But I wrote a letter telling him why I thought it was the right job for me and why I was the right person for the job, and that's how that happened. So, it was very much a matter of, again, being intentional and sometimes making an overture that's not necessarily comfortable. Like, we all like to be humble. None of us like to like wave our own flag, but sometimes you have to.
So working on hometown hockey, obviously you worked with a lot of great people, Ron McLean being one of them. Was it intimidating when you first got on that stage, or was it something you were pretty comfortable with the music career?
No, it's so intimidating. I think, every aspect of performance is different. I did a lot of really big live performances when I was a musician. I was on a reality show that was broadcast live in front of millions of people. And that was an area that became more and more comfortable for me. But when I moved into TV broadcasting, I started at a small station and I was so nervous at the beginning. It was just different. Um, but hometown hockey for sure, when they're like, oh yeah, and you'll be there beside Ron McLean, who's a legend and certainly to my mind, the best broadcaster in Canada, certainly one of the best broadcasters in the world. So yeah, it's intimidating. And I mean, I think in a way it never stopped being a little bit nerve-wracking for me because Ron, first of all, Ron has a photographic memory.
Really?
Right? So like where the rest of us need notes to remember things, he just doesn't. And he has this incredible capacity he's totally seamless in the way he weaves stories, and even when you think he's going like somewhere strange, he always brings it back. So he's just brilliant. And so, I can never do what he can do. Like I can't list off 12 names. So,
Yeah.
so part of it is just also recognizing, where my strengths lie, and relying on those and being, but I sure learned a lot from him.
Well, that's what I've always found interesting, right? I've had the honor of talking to a guy like David Amber, for example, who told me that he knows Elliot Friedman, who does everything and also has a photographic memory. And then there's broadcasters who will write down absolutely everything and study nonstop and use about 5% of the
Yeah,
notes they took. I'll always remember David Amber telling me he uses about 5% of the notes that he
yeah.
takes down. And obviously, you have to be a little bit different in the broadcasting industry. One question I had for you was, how did you find your own voice in the industry working among so many people? Was it difficult for you to find your own voice?
Um, I don't know if it was difficult. I think it was, I feel like I was fortunate enough to land in a place where I could use my voice.
Right.
So, I think like I don't know, I have a particular moral compass when it comes to, what I feel is right and wrong, and, have always been really passionate about belonging and inclusion. And with hometown hockey, all of us, like from the producers to Ron to me to even the people working the festival, we really wanted to make sure that we were telling Canada's story, and Canada's story is a patchwork. It includes everybody. So that was at the heart of that show. So that show allowed me and gave me the platform to use my voice in the way that I wanted to, which was to speak out against inequity, against injustice, and in a way that I could. Yeah, I think we all want to see like hockey at its best. We know it can be an incredible culture, but there are some
Absolutely.
things that need to change. So I really do. I credit Rogers Hometown Hockey for really giving me that platform.
And I wanted to add on to that too with your stories and all that. I've followed you on Instagram for a very long time. And obviously I've seen your stories about inclusion and growing the game, not only for women, for people of other cultures and growing it in other aspects of the game. Where did that passion kind of come from for you? Was it something that you kind of felt at a young age? Was it something you kind of grew into seeing, the injustices in Canada? Where did that passion come from?
I think a little bit of both. Certainly remember as a kid just feeling injustice like really keenly. Just kind of hurt my heart always. And I certainly had an awareness of the, you know, inequality, like gender inequality from a really young age. I think I was a mini feminist from a very, very young age. But certainly, just being out in the world and paying attention to the news, um, and hometown hockey in itself was an absolute education. I think all of us learned a lot about First Nations in this country, and the inequities and the history, a lot of stuff that my generation didn't learn in school.
Right.
Um, but yeah, I think it just comes from something within me that just inequity hurts.
I like that. And I like how you talk about those issues. And I'm sure there's a lot of backlash at times too. I'm sure people will say their stuff, but I'm glad that you stay true to yourself. And that's really important. Going
Yeah.
back to hometown hockey, do you have a particular moment or a particular story, maybe a place that you visited that really stuck with you?
I mean, a
I'm
lot
sure there
of
were
them.
so many. I'm sure
Yeah,
there were
there are
so
so
many,
many.
but
We were in over 150 communities.
wow.
I think, we always point out the First Nations that hosted us. We were hosted at Enoch Cree Nation, which is just outside of Edmonton. We were hosted on Peguis First Nation, which is in Manitoba. Uh, those were really profound. Oh, and like those were the nations that hosted us, but there was a lot of First Nations and Indigenous involvement in a lot of our stops. Um, so that was just really special because I think we were privy to this sense of generosity, sharing of cultures and willingness to teach, on their part, and us being willing to learn. I think those very much stand out to us. But I mean, honestly, like even if we thought, oh, this is going to be a pretty meh stop, it was never that way. There
Right.
was always something or someone that just made it magical. I mean, there were some cold places.
Especially.
There was some like crazy weather and, like that kind of exceptional stuff, but they were all amazing. Another one that stands out, I think, is being back in Swift Current, Saskatchewan. Sheldon Kennedy was on our show, and they were just about to release a documentary on his journey with abuse, and his just resilience and recovery. And um, it's really gratifying to be able to create a space for an interview where somebody feels safe to talk about hard things. And that was a moment that really stood out.
Do you feel like the sports industry is still doing a good job of that? Obviously, hometown hockey was so impactful, but obviously it's discontinued now. But do you feel that they need to come up with some more initiatives to be able to talk more about the sport outside of it, or do you think they're doing a good job right now?
Yeah, that's a good question. Um, I feel that in hockey specifically, storytelling is lacking. I do. I mean, and not to say that it was, hometown hockey solved all the problems, but I think we led the way, and I think we um, were able to help, shepherd in an era of deeper storytelling in hockey that has already, I think, since left. Um, when you get rid of, one of your greatest interviewers and Christine Simpson, you don't have like they're just I don't know. It's not the same. It's disappointing. But on the other hand, I think the content now is not necessarily up to the big broadcasters, and there's a lot of stories that are being told in smaller ways on different platforms using different media. So in that way, I think social media will save storytelling. It's going to start coming from younger people, and people who are more social media savvy. Um, I think in other sports, they are doing a great job. I think the WNBA does a fantastic job.
Absolutely.
I feel like they're the gold standard for a lot of things. So yeah, but in Canada, I sure would like to see some of the features and um, interviews return, but doesn't seem to be a priority right now.
I feel you. Talking a little bit more about interviews, obviously you're working with the San Jose Sharks right now. I have a buddy who's like the biggest San Jose Sharks fan I know, and
Really?
I told him it's so weird to me. He lives in Toronto. It's the only San Jose Sharks fan I've ever met in my life. But I told him I was having you on the podcast, and he couldn't believe it. He's like, "Wow, this is gonna be awesome." He's my roommate. I don't think he's ever watched a single one I've done, but I'm pretty sure he'll be watching this one.
Oh,
But
good. Oh, good.
with the San Jose Sharks, how did that opportunity fall into your lap?
Man, it's just, again, it's about sort of putting yourself out there. Hometown hockey ended in June of 2022. We all saw the writing on the wall. COVID really hurt us a lot. So, we it was kind of inconsistent. Then they switched our nights from Sunday to Monday, which made no sense. And we just kind of felt like it wasn't a priority anymore. In the meantime, I had some stuff happen in my personal life that where California was a possibility. And so I approached both the Sharks and NBC Sports California saying, "Hey, I'm thinking I might move down here. Is there anything I can do for you?" And luckily they knew who I was. They knew also what I brought to the table, which was really exciting for me, that it wasn't, the San Jose Sharks are an organization that wanted what I bring in terms of highlighting diversity and different stories and community. And NBC Sports California was the same. So they actually created jobs for me, which is so great. So yeah, for a long time, they didn't have a ringside reporter there. So they, yeah, they gave me some work, which is exciting. And now I'm back living in Toronto, but still working down there. So it's a bit of a commute, but I love the team, and I'm looking forward to also a new era, a new winning era, hopefully.
Yeah, hopefully. Would you
Yeah.
say that it was difficult trying to transition from hometown hockey to like interviewing players straight up? Was it kind of, was there a lot of similarities in that job, or were there a lot of differences that took time to adjust to?
Um, I think a little bit of both. I mean, I had never worked in the arena, so for me that was actually really fun because it's where the action is. So, it's a different skill set. Like, when you're telling those stories in game, they're 60 seconds long. And so you got to kind of have your thoughts together. Um, it's different than hosting a show where you have some time to expand. You better get it right or whatever, you got to get it right quickly. Yeah, the adjustment, I mean, talking to players, it's for me, I mean, it's not hard, but what makes the difference is developing a relationship with the team. So the
Right.
more that I'm around the locker room, the more they know me. And, I'm always going to get the requisite, like, whatever, those stock answers that hockey players give. Um, but the more familiarity I think there is, the more likely it is I may get something a little bit outside of that.
Just a classic answer right there. Boys played hard. It's a good game. Trying to win in the
Yeah,
corners, all the classic.
exactly. Leave it all on the ice, play
Yep.
the full 60 minutes.
In terms of preparation for your interviews, obviously that's one question that I really had at the top of my list for this interview. If you have a San Jose Sharks game, let's say the game's at 7 p.m., what does your day look like before that? How do you prepare? What do you do? Do you have any superstitions maybe? What does a day in the life look like for a San Jose Sharks game?
Um, so I mean, I try to collect stories as I go. So, if I'll kind of create a document, shared document with my producer. And, if I know I have a Penguins game coming up and there's something about Chris Letang, I'll put it in the doc, like as stories come, because we have to have a little something on the visiting teams.
Mhm.
Um, but a lot of there is an art to finding new stories when you're covering the same team over and over again. And a lot of it has to do with being at morning skate and talking to the players, talking to the coaches, talking to my colleagues who are around them a lot more.
Mhm.
Dan Rusanowski, Drew Remenda, Randy Hahn, they travel with the team. So I don't do all the games. So I rely a lot on them, like, hey, what's going on? They'll give me little tidbits. So yeah, a typical game day is go to morning skate, go to the locker room, talk to the guys. I probably will always already have some stories assembled, but maybe I'll get some bits and pieces, do a bit of writing, um, write, maybe my game intro, whatever it is. And then I don't know if it's a superstition, but I feel like if I don't work out on a game day, I feel weird. I
I
feel
like that.
rusty. So maybe it is a superstition. Um, yeah, then I finish the writing, I have a shower, I get ready, I get zhuzhed, and then we go. We usually have a couple hours before game time. We all meet in the media room, have a meal together, and talk about the show, kind of go around the horn, know what everybody's talking about, and then we all disperse into the arena and do our thing.
Do your thing. I was watching the clip of your first ever game with the San Jose Sharks, and they asked you a pretty controversial question there with who's your favorite hockey team growing up? And I actually was very shocked in a good way because my family is actually from Montreal, and
Yeah.
I am a huge Habs fan. Must have been a little bit tough for you there with Montreal, Lane Hudson, and Celebrini in that battle, but
Yeah, my I love Montreal at heart, and I feel okay saying that because the Habs existed well before the Sharks existed. So I feel like I can say that. And like, yeah, I was a fan before San Jose was a team. So, but yeah, I always have a little conflict. And of course, heading into the playoffs, I was all Habs. But
go.
no, but when it's yeah, no, when it's a Sharks game, I'm all Sharks for sure. And I mean that um rivalry. I mean, they're best friends, but Lane Hudson versus Macklin Celebrini is like, I mean, how cool is that?
It's
Watching both of
awesome. Two
them. Yeah.
superstars, right? They're gonna
Yeah,
in the game
incredible.
for a very long time, and both obviously great talents. But I think we both know got to give it to my guy in Montreal for the Calder this year, even though they were both great.
Okay, yes, I agree. I think he's gonna win it.
Yeah,
Um, I just think he was with a hotter team.
Yeah.
Like his performance was great, but at a certain point, like come the trade deadline, um, Celebrini was working with a lesser squad for sure.
Also a little
So
bit injured too that year.
yeah,
Like
no, he
couple
missed
of
some
games.
games. So anyway, you
So
know.
it's saying. One question for you. Obviously, I have similar interests as what you're in right now. I love broadcasting. I love calling games. I love doing interviews. What's one piece of advice you can give me and the people watching this on how to excel in broadcasting?
Just one.
As many as you want. I'm here for them
Oh,
all.
sorry, my dog is growling at a
Maybe give
raccoon,
them one
probably.
and then text me like a list of 50 so I can get a little more
Yeah,
advice.
yeah, yeah. Well, first of all, I'll say that this has been a really good interview. So you're obviously on the right track. And I always, like cold calling people is great. Like there's so many ways to get in touch with people. And I think a lot of people in my position will agree to meet or talk or do a podcast. So um, I always tell people that if you don't have a natural sense of curiosity, this isn't for you. I think you got to kind of do it for the right reasons. And I mean, I certainly saw that with Ron. Like he had so much curiosity. He wanted to know so many details, and that stuff it's important because it keeps you engaged. Um, it keeps, it builds a relationship with other people. And you leave no stone unturned when you have that natural curiosity. The other thing I would say is preparation is key. Like even Ron, who remembers everything, he also had pages of notes. He would
Right.
just, I mean, I don't know how he could read them because they were insane. But like, I think he would write it down and it would just stick in his brain. But like, I do really believe that, when you have uh, a high level of preparation, you can, you know, you can rely on that. That's your bedrock. So when variables happen, like when you're nervous, you're prepared, right? When things start leaving your brain, I think you rise or fall to the level of preparation. So I would say don't skimp on that.
I love it. And I'll also touch upon this too. I had the opportunity to interview Matt Devlin, who's the Toronto Raptors announcer. And one thing he told me is he still goes back and watches his games and takes notes on them. To this day, he's been doing it for almost 30 years, still watches every single game to see how he can improve. And that's the kind of
Oh
level
man,
of dedication that, separates the great from the good, right?
I think so too. And like most of us, it's so cringy like I hate listening to myself. I hate watching myself, but yeah, you don't know what habits you've, sunk yourself into unless you listen back or watch back.
In terms of mental health now, obviously one thing that I like to talk about is balance, right? Obviously you have your family, you have kids, you got stuff going on, you're traveling all the time. When things get tough for you, how do you kind of manage that balance?
I mean, to be honest, not very well. Um, I think I let myself get to a point of overwhelm, but I certainly know better. I do meditate in the mornings. I've made a habit of doing a little, gratitude work in the mornings as well. Uh, I would credit my dog for getting me out of the house, which I think is like just even in the dead of winter, it's super important. Um, but sometimes you just have to shut everything down. I think that's the key is as much as we all want to do everything and we have FOMO and we don't want to miss out on anything. Um, there's an art to saying no and there's merit to saying no sometimes. And I think it's about understanding your bandwidth and establishing some boundaries.
I want to leave you off with one final question, and this one's not going to be easy. Take a minute to think about it if you need,
Okay.
but this is my curious question. Obviously, you do a lot of podcasting, but if you could interview any one person, dead or alive, who would it be?
Oh, I don't have to think about that for one
Oh,
second.
there you go. Okay.
David Bowie.
David Bowie. I love it.
Yeah,
Have you
David
been asked that
Bowie.
question before?
No, but I mean, it's my like, who would you
Oh,
invite for dinner? I haven't. No, I hadn't. The interview question, no, but who's my dinner guest? Him. So
I
same
imagine.
reason. Yeah,
There you go. Well, mine for sure,
100%.
100% would be Carey Price.
Oh, yeah, he'd be
I'm
great too.
I'm a goalie in hockey, and that's literally my inspiration. It's the reason I became a goalie. So that's where I would be. I always remember this. This used to be my old room. Ever since I moved out to university, my mom has completely made it her own room, took out everything. But I had a massive sticker of Carey Price on this wall, took up the entire back wall. So definitely would be
He, yeah, no, he's pretty wonderful. I was at the NHL Awards the year that he won all the awards, the Vezina and the
Hart
Hart.
Trophy.
And
Yep.
I just remember his media availability afterwards.
Hmm.
Um, he's such a gentle person.
Right.
And he was, passionate about talking about, First Nations and equity. It was just really beautiful. Yeah.
He's a great
Good
guy.
choice.
Obviously, mental health too. He has a lot of
Hmm.
stories and just ties really in. But David Bowie, there's the answer.
There's your answer.
All right. I think that's good to close off the interview. Really appreciate your time and you coming on my podcast.
Thank you. This was great.
All right, guys, this will conclude season 3, episode 3 of the Rattling the Brain podcast with Tara Sloan. See you guys in the next episode.